you see it as a legitimate take on a new direction for horror, or streamer bait bullshit designed to capture as many stupid eyeballs as possible, you can't really discount the effect that Five Nights at Freddy's has really had on the video game horror genre. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, have never heard of Five Nights at Freddy's, I would love to ask how you got an internet connection to the rock you're living under. Seriously, this game is friggin' everywhere, from Twitch streams to YouTube to fucking Let's Play to it's all over the internet. This game is super duper popular. And whenever anything happens with the notably reclusive developer Scott Cawthorn, who develops the game alone, you could tell that the entire game's media kind of gets in a frenzy about it. To break it down to its most basic level, Five Nights at Freddy's is a game about not being eaten by robot bears. You're a character, often isolated into one spot. You have to protect yourself from an oncoming onslaught of psychotic, murderous animatronics in an old Chuck E. Cheese-style restaurant. This often involves using cameras and other systems to protect yourself and ward off incoming murder bots. And if you fail, I bet you I just scared you. It's a jump scare. You didn't expect that one coming. Each game is built on this same core, but makes some tweaks to keep the idea fresh. Similar to how the Assassin's Creed games are kind of built on the same core of systems, but often make small to major tweaks to make each one feel a little fresh. Hey, they've even brought in the horrifying animatronics.
Ubisoft, I will continue to use this joke until you can prove to me that you can make an actual PC release that doesn't break instantly.
Now, most of the people who play these games really enjoy them for one of two reasons. Either they're sadistic, crazy jump scare addicts who just really enjoy having loud sounds and scary animations fly at their face, or they're drawn in by Scott Cawthorn's really unique brand of storytelling. Now, most of the enclaves you're going to find on the internet about this game are generally there for the latter, not counting Tumblr, and that's really gross. Scott follows this very Dark Souls style of storytelling, much like the titular game Dark Souls. He shows pieces of story through minigames and hallucinations and odd occurrences, and lets your imagination, and in this case the community, fill in the gaps. It's a very deep and engaging method of storytelling. The theories surrounding Five Nights at Freddy's are just as fun to engage in and think up as the actual gameplay itself. I mean, look at fucking MatPat's Game Theorist channel. If Scott decides to release one more game, I think he's gonna have to rename it. So why then does the internet seem to have such a hate-on for Freddy and his friends? Why is the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and I'm not calling it FNAF, that's a dumb shortening of the name, seeing so much criticism for its rapid release schedule, being compared to Activision in terms of milking a series dry for all the money it's worth? Well, I've got a couple of opinions on that, and I guess that's why we're here. And as we're dissecting this today, let me speak to my biases a little. I'm a fan of the games, and have been since the original, and enjoy both of them on a gameplay level, being that I love horror games, and on a story level, being that I love the story that Scott has been weaving. So understand, my viewpoint comes as somebody who enjoys these games, and I'd love to hear your perspectives. If you don't agree with me, as usual, down in the comments, let's just keep it clear down there. I don't want this to turn into, well, regular YouTube comments. You guys are all awesome. Don't worry. When I read about how terrible these games are, I often see three things really pop up, and they kind of feed into each other into this kind of vicious cycle of why this game is bad, a lot of people's opinion. And I'd like to kind of argue these 3 points today, because this is clearly a debate club about giant angry robots, and I love to spend my Saturdays talking about how the video games about spooky animatronics are entirely legitimate.
Number one, Scott is releasing these games so quickly so as to milk them for all they're worth.
It's no secret that these games come out really fast. I mean, the second game came out 2 months before its release date. The fourth game has just been moved forward 2 months as well. I mean, it's really fucking fast how quickly these games are being put out and made. But why are fast releases a bad thing? Well, fast releases are usually synonymous with subpar game quality. And that's extremely valid. I mean, look at the annual release cycles for games like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. The quality drops so substantially as these games are churned out and pumped out as quickly as possible. They come out buggy and broken and sometimes just simply boring as shit due to time constraints and meeting deadlines. I don't think the Five Nights at Freddy's game fall into these traps, though, and I'd like to kind of explain my point here. Consider the games themselves and their scale and scope. Even for an indie title, the Five Nights at Freddy's games are very small in their scope. Think about it. There's like maybe 20 still images with scrolling cameras, a couple of animatronics that move through these still images, and a few animated jump scares. There's really not that much to these games. There's not that much fluff. There's no heavy-handed cutscene-based storytelling. There's no huge set-piece moments. It's very simple and small and compact when you really look at these games. And when you take a look at that scope, the speed of these releases kind of starts to make more sense. When you consider the weight of these games and how quickly they're released and how quickly they're consumed, it starts to make a lot more sense as to why they're able to put them out a lot faster and why there might even be a small incentive for putting them out faster, because they're very small games. They're compact experiences. I mean, playing through the whole game without losing once clocks in at less than an hour. All 3 of these games clock in less than an hour. They're very small games, so putting them out faster, when you relatively compare the scope to larger games, makes sense. When it comes to game quality, there's no accounting for taste, but I like to think that Scott has continued to keep the quality of these games high through innovation, and I'll speak more to that in a little bit here.
Number 2, Scott relies on cheap, shitty jump scares to market this game as streamer bait.
Ha! I got you again! I got you twice with my jump scares. But is this really the only way the game keeps you scared? I wouldn't say so. It employs another form of fear, one from a much older, more beloved set of horror games, employed quite readily, actually, by those games, albeit in a little bit of a new form when it comes to Five Nights. And that fear is panic. Panic, fight or flight, all of that. Even when you complete these games without encountering a single jump scare, there is still a lot of panic associated with pulling this off. Older games, such as the original Resident Evil games, made us panic, and they did this by limiting our supplies through gameplay, throwing enemies at us and putting us in precarious situations. There's a real gripping fear to seeing 4 zombies and knowing you only have 5 bullets and no knives. It's terror itself, it's panic, and it's powerful. Fight or flight kicks in, you freak out, your heart rate goes up, unless there's some fucking crazy MLG pro, you're popping all their heads off, you are probably freaking out and trying to find a way to get out of there. Five Nights at Freddy's manages this as well. It puts you in a pretty dangerous situation. A lot of the game's core survival is based on ensuring you know where the animatronics are hiding, when you have to utilize your resources to protect yourself. Each game plays this out a little differently, and your method of protection changes, but losing an animatronic, being surrounded, seeing Foxy down the fucking hall, and knowing you need to throw on your bear hat, but then there's like another monster right to the left, and you have to spin up the fucking music box and keep puppet from coming at you. It incites a lot of panic, and it does it exclusively through gameplay, something that a lot of horror games fail to do. A lot of horror games have to rely on set pieces to really get you scared, and atmosphere. Very few of them do it through gameplay itself. Five Nights at Freddy's does do it through gameplay. It induces that panic and really gets you going, and it arguably makes the jump scares more intense when you do fail, but when you finish a level, it's exhilarating. You throw your arms up in joy, you're like, I made it, holy crap! It's great. That game employs atmosphere as well, but it's primarily a game about panicking. Also, cheap as shit jump scares, but you know. I came from under the desk. Came from under the desk, and I scared you again.
Number 3, Scott has beaten the formula for these games to death.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, each of the Five Nights at Freddy's games are built on the same bones. You're always isolated in a room, you're always looking at cameras, and you're always trying to fend off these animatronics. So how do systems like this avoid getting stale? Well, the face-eating animatronic is in the details. The first game presents you with a power bar, which drains slowly through the night. If you run out of power, you're dead. You can seal the doors to stop animatronics from getting in, but this also drains power, a precious resource. Lights, things like your cameras also drain this power. The second game has no doors, no power bar, instead gives you a disguise, which allows you to fool certain animatronics. But it doesn't work on all of them. Some require different methods to pacify them, which involve you casting off your disguise, flashing a light at them, or utilizing a wind-up music box. The third game only features a single antagonist, and you can use sounds to lure him in different directions and destruct his momentum towards you. But these systems, as well as your camera and ventilation, something that prevents you from hallucinating, can fail and need to be rebooted. On top of this, there are phantoms that come in and disrupt your systems as well. And that can have other effects, and can be generally avoided through certain methods. Each of these may sound like a trivial difference, but they have a massive effect on how you play each game. A comparison would be the difference between League of Legends and Heroes of the Storm. Though there's some slight mechanical differences between the two, they are very different games when those mechanical differences are put in. Another example would be Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Though they share the same core, it's the small differences that make a huge difference. All that said, it gives the games an air of freshness. They feel familiar, but not enough for them to go stale. Now, there's no accounting for taste, and this doesn't apply to everybody. But in my opinion, the gameplay between the games has innovated enough in that each feels unique in its own simple way. And that leads to my conclusion. Love it or hate it, Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most popular game franchises to come into horror since Amnesia: The Dark Descent reignited the entire genre. I think Freddy Fazbear may yet hold a seat on the table of horror greats, and so long as Scott keeps piling the passion and genuine love for the art into these games, as he has been, I think in a year's time, when we're all playing Five Nights at Freddy's 17, you may come to the same realization that I did. Seriously, you think 4 is going to be the last one? I don't think it's going to be the last one. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching this little video on Five Nights at Freddy's. After the new trailer kind of dropped, I wanted to talk about the games themselves and what they brought to the table. So, you just watched it, you don't care. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. I love hearing from you guys, talking about it. It's really cool. If you want to hear about more of this kind of opinion commentary stuff, the Orange Hatter Show, there's an annotation there. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more review-tacular, I've got Free-to-Play right down there where I review free-to-play games. But, yeah, thank you very much, and you all have a great one. Thanks again for watching.